Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today for the Building Analytics Foundations for Creating Construction Dashboards with Power BI workshop. I'm excited to have Ben Harrison and Michelle Werkmeister joining us today. And I think we have a great interactive session for you that I think you'll get a lot out of. So the agenda for today is really just to set the stage of why we're here, what Power BI is, and we'll talk a little bit about how our company fits in to this workshop picture, and then most of the content will consist of a demo of some construction analytics experiences in Power BI that Ben is going to lead us through. And then we'll jump into the meat of the presentation, which is going to be actually getting hands-on and building your own interactive Power BI report, which Michelle will walk you through. And then at the end, we'll open it up and make sure to answer any questions that you have. I also wanted to just cover a few housekeeping points, which is we will make this recording available to you. So you can reference it if you can't stay the whole time, or you want to have a colleague join or something. We will give that recording to you. We'll also we'll keep the workshop Power BI environment open for you for 2 weeks. So you'll have that, and you'll be able to go back in there and play around if you so desire. So yeah, and if you have questions, the chat is disabled, but you can answer, or you can type your questions into the Q&A panel down at the bottom of the Zoom application, and then we'll get to those later on in the presentation. All right, so real quickly, we'll just introduce the team here. My name is David Kettinger, and right now I'm leading the marketing team. Worn a lot of different hats over the past 9 years with Preferred, and really just a big data nerd and everything Power BI. So I'm always happy to help people get started with Power BI. And along those lines, Michelle Werkmeister will be joining us, who's actually our training director. And she'll be sharing her superpower of making complex Power BI concepts easy for you to understand. And then we also have Ben Harrison, who's our VP of Product Management, and comes with a wealth of construction business intelligence and analytics experiences, which is why we are going to tap on him to lead you through our demo today. And just to let you know, we will be giving away an Amazon gift card at the end of the session. And a lot of you have probably ordered some items from Amazon and clicked a few buttons, and Amazon organized your order and delivered it to you, most likely in a short period of time, unless it's the holiday season, in which case it could take a couple weeks. And we like to think of ourselves as the Amazon for data analytics. And our quick launch solution, which you'll use to connect to some ERP data today, really helps you organize and deliver your enterprise analytics to your coworkers in a timely and trusted way as well. So in honor of that reference, we're gonna be giving out a gift card. So stay tuned for that at the end of the session. So Preferred Strategies is really an enterprise analytics provider that operates as an extension of your data team. And we've been around since 2002, and over the last 23 years or so, we've helped hundreds of customers really bridge the gap between these complex corporate systems, such as just enterprise resource planning systems and enterprise performance management systems, and the leading analytics and BI technologies. And so our goal is really to help enterprises continue advancing their analytics journey, and a lot of times that involves replacing their legacy reporting tools with a more modern cloud-based data platform like Power BI, which you'll see in action today. So this is really just a quick tool to help you assess where you're at from an enterprise analytics perspective. And really the first step in harnessing analytics and becoming data-driven is acceptance and honestly evaluating where you and your company is from a data maturity perspective in order to create a plan to improve and get to where you want to be ultimately. And so, as I mentioned, our goal at Preferred Strategies is really to help our customers continually advance on this data maturity spectrum. And hopefully today you'll pick up some new data skills in this interactive workshop that'll help you do just that. So, just real quick, I mean, some of you may follow Gartner, but Gartner is a research, like an industry research company that analyzes a lot of different technology spaces, including the analytics and business intelligence sector. And they come up with this magic quadrant analysis of maybe the top 20 or so based tools on the market and rank them as far as their ability to execute, which you can see over here on the y-axis, as well as their completeness of vision, which you can see over here on the x-axis. And really the goal is to be up here in this top right quadrant, the leaders quadrant. And you can see Power BI is really has held this very dominant position for the past 4 or 5 years in the leaders quadrant. This particular version is a version that I built in Power BI that allows you to see how the vendors have trended over the past 24, 25 years. Wow. Time flies. But we picked Microsoft mainly because they really have dominated this quadrant. And they've been in the leaders quadrant for the last 17 years. And it's really been driven by Power BI, which has well above average user functionality. They just have massive adoption by pretty much every corporate, every Fortune 500 company and many more. And that, obviously their integration with Microsoft 365 and Azure has contributed to this dominance. It's really just a really ambitious product roadmap that has this continuous development and release cycle. So there's always new features and new functionality to leverage. So as far as like a definition, really Power BI is this collection of software applications that creates this enterprise analytics ecosystem that you can use to connect to your data, model your data, and visualize your data in order to tell effective stories about what's going on in your organization. And so you have your Power BI desktop application, which is used to do that data modeling as well as do that report creation. And then you typically would publish that to the Power BI service, which is the cloud component that's used for collaborating with other teammates and organizing content into what they call workspaces and apps. And then ultimately you can consume that on any mobile device using the Power BI mobile app. So it's a good breakdown of sort of the Power BI ecosystem. We'll be focusing a lot of our time in the Power BI service, which can also be used to create reports, which Michelle will show you today. And then as far as types of reports, Microsoft in Power BI, you can create a few different types of analytical reports. So you can do these more interactive Power BI reports, which a lot of people refer to as dashboards. And that's what we'll focus on today. But you can also create some more formatted reports that Microsoft calls paginated reports in Power BI to create those more operational style reports or financial reports as well. And then you can also connect you can connect to Power BI data using Excel as well. We don't have time to show you all that today, but that is an option if that's something you're interested in. And then as far as the data that we're going to connect to, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about connecting Power BI to your enterprise data. We prefer a more centralized single source of truth approach, which is why we're going to be connecting to our quick launch data model here, which we'll be using to build out our report in our workshop today. And there, as you can see here, there's a lot of advantages to using a centralized enterprise model in Power BI. From automating repetitive workflows that many of you are probably familiar with, where you're extracting your data to Excel and manipulating it, and then maybe connecting it to Power BI only to have to do it again next month. or next week if you're really unlucky. And then how do you govern that data? It's much easier when you have a centralized model, as well as improving the latency of the data, and ultimately just providing the most trust to your business users as possible. So with that, I'll go ahead and we can jump over to Ben's demo, where he's going to walk us through some pretty cool construction analytics dashboards out there, and ultimately what your experience will be like after you create a report and want to share it with your company in Power BI. So Ben, with that, you want to take it away?
Thanks, David. And as you mentioned, most of this time we're going to have you guys be hands-on creating reports, but I do want to talk about some of the new content that we've been developing that may be interesting to you as a construction company employees. This was done, the reports I'm going to talk about here, we did an in-depth webinar last week, and at the end, David's going to send out a link at the after this workshop today that you can see that recording. But one of the things I've always been interested in is the idea of where's profit come from. So we've got this report that looks at maybe total profit on a job and says, well, that's partly due to estimated profit, partly due to change order profit. Then, if it's red, it means I lost some money against my budget. So I plan to do something for a certain value of money, but I spent more than I intended, right? So that could be profit or could be loss there. And then the revenue variance. If I have a unit price contract and I was going to do a certain quantity and instead I do more, there might be additional revenue. But if you think about where revenue comes from, that where profit comes from, it comes from those four sources. What I'm interested in is by looking at different project managers, how does that change how they do? What does that mean that some people are really good at beating costs, some people are really good at maybe getting change orders, and learning how do I identify those best practices so that I can make more project managers drive up so all these bars are green instead of some of them being red. Besides that, if you actually look at the cost variance, I'm also very interested in drilling through to how often does a project manager know when those cost variances occur? Obviously, this particular graph is looking at percent complete on one axis and over under budget on the other, so our estimated versus actual. And what I found in my experience that, if this particular blue line, this is a specific job for John Madden, my project manager, where he was about breaking even, and then he emptied his sandbags at the end of the job. So that's interesting to me, particularly as I'm looking at maybe my risk to the company of, how likely is it that John Madden sandbagging, how likely is it that he's going to recognize profits early on in the job? And if I was the controller or the CFO, I'm interested in like this black curve here, where John Madden identified profit early in the job as opposed to leaving it in the sandbags. I like that. That is a really healthy curve. So again, understanding the profit and the timing of profit as I'm looking at my backlog is what you might do in this profit analysis type of report. I think this is good to think through in terms of traditionally, I ran WIP reports forever. 18 years, it seemed like forever at a construction company. And I usually was using this type of analysis where you got rows and columns. I'm looking at the contract and I'm really trying to identify costs in excess, bills in excess. And so it's nice to have this, I can sort this by backlog and maybe look for issues or problems there or sort by contract. So having it in a report is nice, but even better still, and this is one of the things that Michelle will build, is to look at that as a trend over time. So if I'm looking at a single moment in time, I might be saying, okay, job to date, what is my costs in excess, bills in excess? But I really personally was interested in a given project manager or a given job set where the monthly cost in excess continually got better or worse, right? So if I had 3 red bars in a row, that project manager has some problems, right? They're spending money and not collecting it, or something's not is amiss. So being able to look at that trend over time again really gives me some insights into the risk I have in that. Two more reports just to kind of look at. Again, there'll be a lot more depth if you look at the recording from last week. But in this case, cash flow. Every company in construction cares about cash. What I've done here is created an actual cost, and it's adjusted by OpenAP. So that'd be my cash out, actual cost hitting the job, but subtracting any OpenAP that I've not actually paid. And then the billing is the cash in, adjusted by, in this case, OpenAR and retainage. And I've got the values over here. But that allows me to start looking through and saying, well, where is the cash flow for a given company? And let me find down here Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is actually cash to the good. That's nice. You can kind of see that in the time-based element here. This is a monthly cash flow look at Jerry Rice's jobs as a total. I could look at a specific job. But again, understanding in construction, cash flow is a big driver of return on investment. So understanding who's doing that well, what are the practices they have, is where I would be focused on this type of report. And the last report before I hand it over to Michelle is this idea of historical costs. There's a lot of ways to look at this that to me were very insightful. I'm actually comparing unit costs for, in this case, potholing, and saying, okay, most often I'm beating cost here, but sometimes I'm not. I would actually prefer to have this to be more balanced, because what I think if I beat costs for potholing this often, I'm putting too much money in my estimate. If I can, really, if this was balanced, half green and half red, that would tell me that on the average, my estimate's good. I also see I've got big variances. So this is a process improvement area that this type of report would help me understand, what are the areas that I can do to improve my activities, my actual operations. So neat insights. But the point about this is when you have a governed data set, as David mentioned, that kind of that blue cube, you can start creating some really interesting content. But the point that we'd like to do today is to have Michelle talk about how do you start building these things? Where do you go in Power BI? It's so powerful. There's so many choices. So just really start understanding what's possible. So with that, Michelle, I was going to hand it over to you.
Actually, real quick, I want to jump back and share the slide so I can help people get connected real fast. But thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me know if you can't see my PowerPoint. Should be coming up now.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, thanks. That was a great example of some powerful analyses you can build around, especially around the construction space. But as you mentioned, we want to teach you to walk before you can run, which is the real main intent of this workshop. So in order to do that, we're going to pass it over to Michelle. And just to get you started, I mentioned we're going to be building this in the Power BI service, which means you're going to need to access it in a browser. We like to use Chrome or Edge just for the best experiences. And within there, you need to open up either an incognito mode or an in private window in Edge, so that if you have Power BI already with your organizations, you can use our login credentials and you won't get mixed up there on which account to use. So what that looks like is really going in Chrome up here to this ... and click in the new incognito window. Once you do that, you're going to go out to powerbi.com, which you can see the link here. And then you're going to use this username and this password in order to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here, BI Hero 1, BIQuickLaunch.com. Feel free to follow along with me, and then I'm going to submit it. And then I'm going to put in this password, which is let me see with a capital L and 3s instead of E's. So let me see. And then you can choose to stay signed in. Doesn't matter because you're in an incognito browser. So once you get here, this will be the home screen for Power BI. And over here on the left is sort of your Power BI content navigation panel. And you can click on workspaces, which is this object in Power BI that you can use to store related Power BI reports, dashboards, and data sets. So the one we're going to be looking at is this construction analysis workshop. So everybody should see that. And then within there, you should see a report with your name associated with it. So that will be the report you're working from. So Ben and I will be monitoring the Q&A panel. If you have issues getting connected or not seeing a report with your name on it, just feel free to pop a question in the chat, and we'll help you with anything that you come across during the workshop. All right, with that, Michelle, the stage is all yours.
Great, thank you. So welcome everybody. I'm excited to get started and help you guys get through. So hopefully everybody was able to follow along with David and get to the point where you can log in to Power BI. So you should see my screen. And I am just at that same starting point that you would have been at. Typically, we would all have our own login. Today, we're all using this BI Hero one. We're doing a shared login, and we're using a static shared data set just to build the reports in. So there's a lot of things we're going to do today that are not necessarily, or that don't fall in our best practice as we typically build reports, or what we tell you to do in building reports. But we had to make some adjustments just for this session to accommodate this and to help us get going fast. So as David said, if at any point during this presentation you guys have any problems, please just throw a comment in the question Q&A panel. Even if it's just a comment, both David and Ben will be monitoring. They can jump in, they can ask me to reshare something or ask me a question. Don't wait until the very end to ask questions. That's fine. Just ask them as we go. So this session is really for you guys. We want you to just get an introduction to Power BI and see how fun and easy it is to start building content out here. So now, hopefully I've given everybody enough time to get logged in. I'm going to go ahead and get started by choosing in that menu bar on the left-hand side of my screen, the workspaces icon, and hopefully you can see this. And then I've got my one workspace out here called construction analysis workspace or workshop. So in this workspace, we have lots of reports, and I too have one called GL Analysis Report Michelle. And you're just going to click on that report to open the report. So I was in here kind of poking around before. Right here, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, we have pages of the report. This report is optimized for learning purposes. It is not necessarily what you guys would build for a production-ready report. What Ben was showing you is more production-type reports. So they're structured just a little bit differently or broken down a little bit differently. But mine is really optimized for learning. So every L stands for a lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the different things that I want to walk you through or show you. The report that we've built here, we actually built this and used it for a presentation that we did, a live presentation with over 150 participants. And it was in person. So one of the challenges you face is people being able to see a screen. So what we've tried to do is put as much information as we can on a page. It's going to feel a little overwhelming as we get started or at first, but once I kind of explain it to you, you're going to go, oh, that's not so bad. Okay, I get what she's trying to do here. So just bear with me. Again, I would never want to roll this out to you or say this is a great report. I want you guys to just know what we can do. So in here, again, I think I've got a couple people saying they are in, so that is great. I'm going to just go ahead and keep moving on then. So you can see here are just, kind of our objective of what we want to do. We're going to walk you through understanding the data model that we're working with. So that's what we call that database behind the scenes as the model. And we're going to talk about some of the uniques that we have within this data model. So we are using a data model that was built by Preferred Strategies. It's called our Quick Launch product. And we're looking at the GL. One thing I love about our GL model is it's really universal to any product that you're using, whether you're JD Edwards or Vista or anything. GL is kind of GL. So I love to be able to talk about this one because it's pretty generic. But the features that we have built in here and how we're going to be able to build reports is pretty cool. So we're going to talk about some of the features in Power BI, like slicers and some of their different visualizations, and build those. So this is just what we're going to go through. The second page, analysis summary, I like to start with the end in mind. This is what we're going to build during this session. So I want to help you guys to all be able to walk through this and build out this report here. So we are going to build a report. We're going to have 3 slicers on the report. A slicer is just a filter that sits right on top of the report. It's going to allow the user to choose what year they want to build the report for, what period they want to build the report for. And then if they want this data to be month to date, quarter to date, or year to date. So they can select the time dimension for the report. And you'll notice as I choose those different options, how quickly my data resets here. So we are using JD Edwards demo data. So we're back in 2018, 2019, as we're looking at that data. So I'm going to do all of my reporting today over 2018, September of 2018. Let's go ahead and let's just start with that L1 or lesson 1. And this is really understanding our data model. So what we want to do here is just make sure that you understand how is the data that we're going to build over, or what is it? The blue box on any of these screens is going to be basically what I'm talking about or what I'm saying. So you're welcome to read those if you'd like. The yellow box are the steps or the instructions that we're going to go through. So click by click, how do you do it? And somewhere on the page is going to be a little sample of what we're trying to create. So this is our inspiration. That's what we're going to do. And then you have this part right here that says create table here, where we're going to actually build the solution. So we're going to have the ability to do it. If at any point, right now we're in what they call the consumer mode of the Power BI service. So really everything I'm doing here is from an end user perspective, which means I have some buttons across the bottom that will help me. So if I get lost or I'm not sure how to do something, I can hit the show me button. And this actually walks you through a little video that will tell you exactly where to click to do everything, to do whatever it is that we're doing. It opens it in a separate window so you can get back out. Or I can, if I just got myself totally confused, I'm all lost, I can hit the solution and it will show me the solution button. So again, try it, allows you to do it. Show me is going to walk you through a story lane video of how we created it, or you can just hit the solution to see the answer. So this is the answer key. So you've always got those 3 buttons to go back to. We will leave this environment out here for you to access for the next couple weeks. So again, just know that if you get lost during the session or you want to go back and see something more, play with something more, you will have access to the system, and these will always be available to you to click on. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to come in here and understand what is the data that we're going to be building with. How do we create this analysis summary report? So we need to look at the data model. In order to do that, we are going to get into a designer mode here in Power BI, the service. And to do that, you're going to go to the top of your screen and there's a little edit button. Now, again, depending on your resolution, it might be more towards the center or the middle of the screen, but it's going to be the last icon that you see up there, and it's a little pencil. You will know you are in edit mode when those pages go from that left-hand menu bar to being tabs across the bottom of your screen. These tabs will function just like an Excel spreadsheet. Since this is a finance, we're talking about finance here, I feel like everybody knows how to navigate around in Excel. So now we're just going to jump between the pages, just as if we were going between pages in a Power BI or sheets in a Power BI or in a Excel workbook. Yeah, can't get any of my words right today. So here we are. Once you go into designer mode, the other thing you'll notice is you have 2 panes over here. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you have 3 panes. The filters pane, which is now collapsed. You can expand or collapse it with this little arrow. A visualizations pane, which is what we're going to use to define what the picture is that we're creating. and a data pane where we will pull the data out of. So where do I get the information that I want to put in my visualization? So these two panes, the visualization and the data pane, are what we're going to use to define the pictures or build the pictures that we want to show or tell the story about with our data. The filters pane just helps to limit the data that we're looking at. So in order to build something in Power BI, the most important thing to know, if there's only one thing you take away from this class, please know this: focus is everything. So whatever you're clicked on in this screen is going to be what you're updating. So what I'd like you to do is go here and click on this little gray box that looks kind of like a table. And it's going to do what they call put focus on the visual. You'll notice the focus on the visual, it has some kind of dark indicators around the outside. That is how you know that you have focus. You can just watch my screen for a moment. Here I focused on a text box with my instructions. Here I focused on the text box that tells a little bit about tables. Now I'm focused on the visual box so that I can define what is the visual that I want to create. Okay, so focus on that visual and then click on the format under the visualizations pane. Click on that first icon that says build visual. This says, what kind of picture do I want? What story do I want to tell? We're just going to go in that visualizations pane from top to bottom. So in the top, we're going to say, what is it that I want to create? And we want to just create a simple table here. So that is the picture that looks kind of like a spreadsheet. So whenever you click on that, we're now in a table mode. And now if you go down, you'll see they have what they call a field well, and it says columns. Which fields do we want in our field well? So what we want to do here is we want to start adding those items to our table. So what we want in here is we want to pull in a measure and a dimension. The measures are what they call are the amounts, and it's the number that we want to slice and dice. The dimension fields are how do we want to slice and dice it. So if we look at our inspiration report, what we want to pull in is we want to see what are our actual amounts by period, our actual amounts by department and description. So we are just going to simply focus on our table. We're going to come over here in the data pane, and we need to go find those fields. So the department and description come from this table here called department. So in the data pane, you have all of the different tables that are part of this perspective. We didn't talk about perspectives yet, but David showed you that blue cube with all the different dimensions, the data that's coming in, and then all the different dimensions that you can look at. The perspective is just our way to say, of all of that data that sits out there, what are the tables that we want to use to build our report over? And we already know that behind the scenes, we have relationships between those tables so that we can pull out the data and we're not overstating values or understating values based on that relationship. We don't want to filter something out inadvertently. So here I'm going to hover over department. And then I can see that I have 5 fields in the department table. Now, I don't like that my screen kind of cuts this off. So you can resize this pane just by kind of hovering on that light gray line and just doing a drag and drop.
Michelle, sorry to bump in, but I think you want the department GL
Do
according
I
to
want
your
department
yellow
GL? Perfect. Thank you, Ben. So I'm going to go to department GL. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find that department and description. And I am going to just check that box, and it puts it right in here for me. So all I did was I looked in the data pane, I went to the department GL, and I found the department and description, and it pulled it in. And again, that goes back to understanding what are these tables, what are the relationships to the data, and how is it going to pull in. If we pulled in department because of the relationship to GL, we would not have gotten the results we were looking for. So now I want to pull in the amount field or the measure, and that comes from this GL balances detail table. So if I come down here to GL balances detail, I have a bunch of folders up here at the top, and these folders are just ways to group our measures together. So if I know I want to build a measure or a visual over actual amounts, I'm going to use the actual folder. If I know I want to build something over the budget, I would go to the budget folder. If I wanted to build a visual where I was comparing actual to budget, I'd have to pull a value from each one of these. Or maybe I want to go look at something in account measures like my expenses or my gross profits or my revenues. So these are specific to just those values. So let's go ahead, let's expand the actual subfolder and navigate in here to where you see that actual amount period. And again, add it to the table just simply by checking the box right next to it, and it will add it. To remove it, we can just uncheck the box and it takes it off of our table. For those of you that felt that was easy and you want to take it a step further, you could do the same steps by using a drag and drop. So if you watch my screen, I'm just going to take actual amount and drag it over to the columns field well. And to remove it, I'm going to remove it using the little X right next to it. So a couple different ways that you can do everything. Microsoft, they always add new ways to do things. They rarely take away the old way. So you'll notice there's multiple ways to do this. And depending on who you work with, I know Adam, the owner of our company, the founder, he really likes to, when he builds visuals, actually take the item and drag and drop it right on the screen with it, which works as well. So lots of different ways. You're going to find a preference the way that you like to do it. So feel free to add that visual. So now we have one dimension field and one measure. The rule of thumb is the more dimensions that you have, the more details you're going to see, or the more rows you're going to see. The fewer you have, the more consolidated that data will be. So if I were to go down here in GL balances detail and maybe add another field like the posted date, right? A date field we know on a transaction table is really going to explode this out. And now you can see I have one line for each one of the different posted dates. My total number stayed the same, but my report now has a lot more data on it. To get rid of that, I just again come over here. I'm going to hit that X, and now it consolidates it back up. Excellent. So as we add any visuals, we're going to see that. Now, perfect. Hopefully everybody was able to have some success there. Just getting in, navigating around, again, looking at the different tables. Every perspective has one primary fact table. That's going to be GL balances detail. That's where our measures come from. And then multiple dimension tables, different ways that you want to slice or dice your data. And that's what you're seeing. Every other table in this list is some sort of a dimension table. They're all related to GL balances detail. Excellent. Well, next, what I'd like to do is I want to show you a little bit more. Let's take this concept to the next level, which is I'm looking at my actual amount, but I actually want to see this number broken up. So I want to see this and say, well, how did I do in a specific month? Or how did I do as a cumulative total for this year? And we're going to do that using what they call in the quick launch solution, time-based measures. So we're just going to go ahead down on the bottom, click on L2, and you'll see here that we're going to start with that same table we just had. So if you got lost into L1, don't worry about it. We've got you covered here with L2. We've got our department, we've got our actual amounts. And now what we want to do, you'll see at the bottom, we have our inspiration. We're going to add some fields for the month to date, the quarter to date, and the year to date. So how do we add these values in? We're going to focus on our table just by clicking on that box, and we'll see everything's defined. And now what we want to do is add some additional measures to the table. So we're going to go to the fact table for this perspective, which is GL balances detail, and expand that folder. And then in the actual folder, you'll notice that we have some fields, actual-MTD, actual-QTD, actual-YTD. So MTD, month to date, quarter to date, year to date. To add those, I just hit the check boxes right next to them, and I get those values. There are some additional time-based measures out here. We'll just talk about them. We're not going to add them. But if you scroll down, you'll see you have actual amount PY MTD or actual amount PY QTD. The PY stands for the prior year. The nice thing about this is with just a button click, I could check actual amount month to date, actual amount PY month to date, and this visual would then be comparing my month to date this year versus last year. Or if I did actual amount YTD, I would compare this year's year-to-date value versus last year's year-to-date value. Okay. So we've got these already built up. You'll also notice we have prior. That's the prior month value. So that's what that does based on whatever you select. It shows you what was the previous month that you've done. So those are already, again, built in. We've got this amazing calendar table back behind the scenes supporting us on this that allows us to really manipulate and slice and dice this data and already know what the calculations are. All we have to do as the user is give it the parameters. So if I say month to date, I have to tell the system what month do I want to look at? Or if I say year to date, what year do I want to look at? So that is, we are going to have to provide that information either through filters or through slicers, but that will allow these to populate. The other one I want to just mention here, give a little shout out to, is the actual amount selected or actual amount selected PY. These values are what you actually saw in our demonstration at the beginning, where the user has a slicer where they can choose, do I want to see month to date, quarter to date, year to date? If I build a visual using this one with dash month to date, it will always show month to date. But if I use this one that says selected, that gives the user the ability to choose which one of these they want to see. So it makes the report more dynamic with not as much maintenance. I don't have to maintain 3 separate reports to show this information. I have one report and the user just chooses. So most of our measures here, if I was looking in my source system, it's going to be one field that gives me my amount. We break that into, what is this, about 14, 16 different measures or different ways to slice and dice that amount, where we build in a lot of logic around it in a calculation so that the user just has to check the box to build the report. So let's talk about how we're going to add the filter parameters to get that month to date or that quarter to date. We're going to use the concept called a slicer. The slicer is just a filter that we put on that same page of the report. In our previous report, we saw that slicer as the visual that was up on the top of the page. In here, we're going to add the slicers, and then eventually we'll put them at the top of the page. But that is just filter that we know changes all of the time. We could also have filters that are over here in the filters pane. They're just a little harder to get to, a little bit more navigating. So how are we going to do this? There's 3 types of filters, and I see them right here. I have a drop-down filter, I have a vertical list filter, and I have the tiles filter. So this is 3 examples of a filter or of a slicer that I could create for year. So the drop-down slicer, the user would hit that drop-down arrow, they see all the years that are available to them, and they would choose the year that they want. The vertical list is same concept. It shows me all of my options. It's my list of valid values, and I choose the one that I want. The tiles are, I like to also call them buttons, where as you scroll across, you see the buttons, and you simply select the button that you want. So in here, we've created, we're going to create 2 slicers, and I don't think I meant to have my slicers already out there. Maybe you guys have yours already set. So what we're going to do, sure's already set. Sorry about that, guys. We're already showing them, so I'll just kind of walk through how we got there. In this slicer for year, what we want to do is focus on the year and come over here to visualizations. And the visual type is the slicer. It's this little funnel icon. And then as you go down, you're going to have to say, which field do I want to build that slicer over? So I want to build it over a year. If that wasn't already populated for us, what we would do is come over here to the data pane and go to the calendar table. And then under the folder for fiscal, we would find year. So this calendar table, again, think of a huge Excel spreadsheet where every row is a date, and every one of these items that you see listed here is basically another column, just a way to describe the date. So, and this is pre-built for us. So all I have to do is choose what do I want to pull in. Now what I have in here is I would see my years, and I can say, well, what do I want this to look like? Do I want it to be a column, a drop-down list, or the tiles? So that is all set using what they call the format section. So in the visualizations pane across the top, there's a button for formatting. And then under slicer settings, this is where you get to tell it the style. So you can have a vertical list, I can have a tile, or I can have the drop-down. And you can select it. So again, I like the tiles, those are the buttons. Now, I'll show you what's happening here in another second. We have the same step that we would go through for period number. So if I come down here to period number, I want to go to my format my visual, select the slicer. Then I would go to the calendar and I would choose the period num. I could also choose something like period description short if I actually wanted the words on there, like JAN, MAR, JUN, DEC. So you can choose which way you want to describe that. And then the user just simply checks that box whenever they want to limit the data. So now I can go to September of 2019. If I hit May, you'll notice all your numbers right below change. So you still have that table below, just so you can see how, as you change your period and your slicers, your numbers are changing as well. Now what's happening here, the reason I'm only seeing 2019 is Power BI has what they call cross filtering that goes on. And so as I select that slicer over here in my list, it is going to limit the other slicers on the page. And so as soon as I choose that first slicer over here, that's limiting. So I want to just make sure if I come here and anything that I had selected, I can deselect it just by clicking on it twice, a second time. But so now if I don't have anything selected, so if you go through each of those three slicers over on the far left and just click on one and then click on it a second time, it will select it and then deselect. So everything is cleared here. And now you'll see here's all of your years, here's all of your periods. So I can choose 2018. I can choose which period I want. Go to 2019 and see the data. So that cross filtering, I just have that set up on one of these that it limits if I choose it in one, it's going to limit this one that we were just setting up. So. Perfect. And again, this just didn't, we had this set up a little bit. So you can see you have your steps to set up the slicer. It does talk about setting up your style. The other one it has in here on the general section, it's talking about the title. So we did toggle off the title on our slicer. For a year, that tends to be, we already know what that is just looking at it. So we can give ourselves some extra space on the report by toggling on or off that slicer. So here it says year slicer, there's the title. If you hit the off button, it would toggle that off. So that's what this step, in step 4, it's talking about there. So, and then it had you repeat that for the year. Excellent. The next piece is talking about the layout of the report. Now, it's really important as you're building Power BI reports to always think about your layout. We recommend using a template whenever you're building a report so that you have a consistent look and feel across all of your reports. So here I can see that I have this template out here where it's pre-built. So in the template, we already will create or set up our slicers. If I know that anytime I build a financial report, I always want to have the users are always going to choose period and they're always going to choose year. Or let's go with an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time they're going to do it. I would put that here on the slicer, or I mean on the template. That way, when I go to build a new report, I can simply make a few tweaks to this, maybe take some things out that I don't need, but I'm going to have these consistent reports as I build. So we always recommend as you're building reports to build using that template so that you get that consistent look and feel. So this is one of our out-of-box templates. Some of the things I like to point out, we have a title up here, kind of in the top left-hand corner. We have the common slicers right there above that little blue line. This main gray area, this is the body of our report. Our templates will always come with one visual. This already has the formatting on it. So you get that nice white background that's going to sit on a little bit darker page background to give you the contrast between the visual. And that way, if you have multiple visuals on the page, you can kind of tell the difference between them. And then we have across the bottom, just some information to help put it in context, like what's our company? We'll have a company logo down here. We might have a date and time for the refresh data. So this data is as of a certain point in time. So definitely important to do. Again, it's a best practice to build off of a template. And then we do provide out-of-box templates for every different module area that we support. So we are currently looking at the GL template in here. Once you have the template, then what we want to do is start creating the visuals on top of the template. And so in order to do that, again, we're just going to walk through and build each of the different visual types that would create our report. So if we go back to, again, just watch my screen for a second. Here's that summary report. You can see that we're on the template. We have our slicers across the top. Now what we want to do is actually create the visuals. I don't know what we did or what I did on here, but I'm going to go ahead and on your slicer page, that's going to do it. Go ahead and deselect. Make sure, go to your slicers page and just clear the slicer. There's a little eraser in the top corner. If you want to clear both of those, that will clean up our slicers on our template page. And I am sorry about that, guys. That it's doing, we've got some filtering going along with these. So it's passing that value across all of my pages for right now. So on that template page, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to go in here. And I'm having a terrible time with my navigating here. I'm using my arrows to go across. And I'm going to go ahead and choose 2019 of September and leave that set here. So again, if you're not seeing all of your slicers on there, just go back one tab to the slicers lesson or the slicers page. Clear the two slicers that we just set up by hitting the little eraser in the top right corner to clear, and then go back to that layout page. And this is where I chose my 2019. So of September. And then we're going to start building each of the different visual types. And I know we're going really fast, guys, so don't worry. You always, whenever you go back after the fact, you have that button that says show me, and it will walk you through each of these steps again. So The first visual that I want to walk you guys through or show you how to create would be what they call the KPIs. So a KPI is our key performance indicator. It really is just going to take a value and highlight it for us. So let's go ahead, and on the top, I'm going to change this to be year to date of 2017. So click on the 2017, and then and I've got my, or I'm like, I like 2018. I like 2018 better. So I'm going to go 2018 September with my year to date. So I can see I've got some service revenue in here. I've got some construction revenue. I've got some goals that I'm trying to get to. So how do I set this up? There's two types of visuals that allow us to really call out a number. The first one is a card. That just shows us a number. So in our visual types over here under visualizations, that's this little one that says 1, 2, 3. The KPI allows us to take a number and compare it to another number, showing it in context. So I'm taking either actual, comparing it to budget, comparing it to forecast, comparing it to prior year, whatever it might be. And then it's showing me, it's already built in the visual to show me, is that up or down from what it was? And is that good or bad? So it gives me this color indicator to, again, tell more of the story without actually doing a lot of work. We all know, just when we take a quick glance at this, red is good, green is bad, right? So am I doing good or bad with revenue? Am I doing, for the services revenue? Am I doing good or bad in construction revenue? So how can we build these? What we're going to do is, I've got two visuals on this one page. So we're just going to click on that one right below it. So, and then I'm going to come over here, and there is a visual over here for the KPI. So that's the little green arrow going up and the red arrow going down. So I've got those two looking there. And we are going to define this. So in our visual, let's go ahead, and what I want is, we want to look at that service revenue. So we're going to come over here and navigate down to our GL balances detail. And I want just the revenue amount. The revenue amount is actually stored here in the subfolder called accounts measures. And we've gone out there and we said, we have put in the criteria of which accounts hold our revenue amounts. So we are going to go in that revenue folder and we're going to find that revenue amount. And then I'm going to come down, and there's a value here called revenue amount, actual amount selected, or prior year. So I'm going to take the selected, and I'm just going to check that box and put it as the value. And then I want to compare it to the prior year. So I'm going to take the one right below it, and I'm going to add that as the target. And I just do a drag and drop on that to make it the target. So now for my revenue, I'm going to compare this year to last year. And then in order for a KPI to show, we actually have to put in here a trend axis. So I like to just go up to the calendar table, and I'm going to find that year value, and I'm going to add that as my trend axis. So I'll give you guys just a moment to navigate through that. Again, in the GL balances detail, we went to the subfolder for account measures, the subfolder for revenue, and we chose the items for revenue amount, actual amount selected, and revenue actual amount selected PY. Then we navigated up to the calendar table under the subfolder fiscal and chose the year dimension as the trend axis. Perfect. And I'm seeing 3.15 million, which is correct. It's just not the number I was expecting. And that's because right now this visual is showing me all of my revenue. But I want to limit this down to just see the services revenue. So what I want to do is, I want to add a filter to this visual so that this just shows me services revenue. So we're going to expand the filters pane right here. And I want to go add my division description field. That is what allows me here to know which one it is. So we are going to find in our data model, I'm going to go over here to data, and I'm going to use the search field. This is a little fun trick. And I'm going to start typing in the field I'm looking for. So I'm going to start typing in division. And underneath account, we have a field out here called division description. And I want to add this as a filter. So this, every one of my accounts has a flag on it that tells it, is it, what type of revenue is it? Is it services or is it construction? So in order to add this, there's a couple ways. You can drag and drop, and we would drag it over to the filters pane and drop it in. Or I find it a lot easier to just right click on the field, go add to filters, and choose this as a visual level filter. So I only want this filter to affect this one visual that I'm focused on. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose service. So now my visual is showing me just the service division, the accounts that are part of the service division. Now we need to clean this visual up just a little bit. So we are going to go to the format your visual. So go to the visualizations pane. And under the format your visual, we're going to just click right there on the paintbrush icon. And the first one I want to clean up is the way that's displaying. Okay, I would never talk to somebody and say it was 0.15 million, right? If I was giving a presentation, that just isn't the way you would say it. So I'm going to go down here to the first section called call out value, and I'm going to change the display units. You can go to auto where you allow Power BI to choose, or I could go ahead and hard code this to always show in thousands. Whichever one makes the most sense for you. I'm just going to hard code it in to be thousands. Then the next piece that I want to do is update my title. So again, in the format your visual section, we're going to go to the general option. So again, it's just another button up here at the top. I click on that, and then I go to the title and expand that. And I'll see where it's hard coded to say revenue versus prior year. And here is where I could just change this and hard code it to just say service revenue. Now, some of you may not like that this says goal when I know that this is my prior year. In order to change that, Power BI allows you to change just about everything in these visuals. So I'm going to go back to the visual section, and that's called the target label. And right here it says goal. I could just change this to say prior year. Oh, spelling counts. And there it is. Perfect. We can do all of those same steps to create the second visual, which is our construction revenue. So again, I'm just going to click on that empty box, and we want to start from the beginning to create a new KPI. So we're going to go to the visualizations pane, choose the option to build a visual, come down here, choose the KPI, and then define it. What is the value or the amount that we want in our visual? Now we know that that's the revenue actual amount. So I need to go select that in the data pane. Something to keep in mind with Power BI, if you use the search feature, it does not automatically clear for you. You do have to come back up here, clear this out yourself so that you can see everything, and now go locate that measure or the amount field that you want. So I'm going to go to the GL balances detail table in the revenue account measure subfolder, and then the additional subfolder revenue. And I'm going to choose those selected amounts. And I'm going to add those as the value and the target. Power BI is pretty good. I just clicked both of those. I checked the box and it put them both right there on the report for me. Perfect. Okay. And now what we have is I want to go ahead and I need to put in that trend axis. So I'm going to go back to the calendar table. I'm going to find that year and put that as my trend axis. I just like to collapse things back up as I talk. Now we know that this is showing me all of my revenue. So I want to limit this to just be construction. So that was one of those fields that we had on our account flag. So I'm going to go to the account table. I'm going to find that division description and I'm going to add that as a visual level filter. Again, I just do a right click, add to filters, visual level filter. And then I choose construction. And if I don't like the way that looks, I can change the format or change the value. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go to my format, my visual, my call out value. I could change this. Again, right now it's showing in millions. I could go back and force this to show in thousands. But the other thing that you want to look at here is it is the, I want to say, nope, it's going to be my trend axis. Always the last one I click on. And that is when you're looking at this, is it good, is low good, or is high good, right? So it, you can change that direction. So I could go in here and I could say that high is good, and that will change. So whenever I'm talking about my construction revenue, or if I'm talking about expenses here, you know, is low better or is high better? So we want, you have that ability again in these visuals. You can really change up anything you want or the way you're looking at it. So we can clean that up. And then you can also go in here and choose, again, I don't know why I would change that because this is my revenue. But I have that ability to set the title as well. So I could come in here under my general, under my title, and change this to say construction revenue. I think before we did this with the expenses in here, which is why it had changed up the color. But I shouldn't, I think this is wrong on the one right above it too, because I don't want my target to be that color. So I'm going to fix this on both of them because my revenue, I want my revenue to be higher than it was last year. So high is good. Oh, perfect. Excellent. Good. Hopefully you guys are doing well and you're following along with me. The next one we're going to build, so we've now looked at this. We've built a few different types of visuals in Power BI. We had a table. We created some slicers, which are visual types in Power BI. They're just kind of a filter visual. Then we looked at creating the template layout just so we had a consistent look and feel. And we created the visual type of a KPI to call out a number or to make that really obvious. The next thing we want to do is we want to start building the pictures with our data. And the first one that I want to look at is the waterfall chart. So the waterfall chart allows us to analyze variance values typically, and see how across any given category, how that cumulative is going to affect the whole value. So if we're looking at our waterfall chart, I can compare in this case, what is my value for the, I can look at my account balances. I'm going to look at expenses in here. I'm going to do an expense analysis variance, and I'm going to break those expenses by the major category and then the account. So I want to see how am I doing, what accounts have the highest expenses in them. So what we're going to do, all of our visuals from this point on will have kind of this very traditional look to them. So I'm going to go ahead and click in here for where I want to build the visual. And we're going to start building this one again, going to the visualizations pane, just starting from top to bottom. Let's choose the waterfall icon. It looks like the letter H. It's right next to the blue funnel icon. So this is the picture we're going to create. As we go down, it says, well, which fields do you want in there? Which dimensions and which measures? So we are going to look at this by category, or major category. So we're going to go ahead and go to the account table. And I'm going to use the major category and description, and I'm just going to add that as my category field. And then what is it that I'm analyzing? We're going to go down to GL balances detail under the account measures, and we're going to look at our expenses. And I'm going to find that expense actual amount selected, and I'm going to put that in there. So this one is just says, what are your expenses? But I don't want the expenses. I actually want to see the variance between my expenses. So I've got this year's expenses, I've got last year's expenses. If you look up just a little bit from here, and again, I'm going to make this a little wider so you can see all my words. We have the expense amounts, but I want to actually chart in here the variance between them. So what I'm going to do is just keep scrolling down, and you'll notice that we have all the variance calculations in there as well. So we're going to take the variance, expense variance actual amount PY selected, and I'm going to put that as my x-axis. So this value actually takes those two selected values that we saw for expenses and just takes this year and subtracts the prior year. So that's what you're seeing here is just the difference charted. Good. Now, there's a couple things I like to add to this. I like to add more information to these visuals. It's important as you build Power BI reports that you think about having these reports be self-service for the user. So if I looked at this and I had a question, how is it that I could answer my own question? There's two ways that we can answer questions. One of them is to add what I call depth to the report. And that is, I'm looking at this report right now, I'm analyzing all of my expenses by their major category. Okay, so I can see what's my equipment expense, what's my overhead expense, what's my G&A expense. But if I might want to actually see this at the next level of detail, which is going from category to saying, well, show me the individual accounts within that category. So that would be adding some depth. So we're going to go back to the visualizations pane, and under the category field, well, I've got major category. We're going to just add another field right here for that account field. So we're going to go in the data pane, and I'm going to go find the account field, account and description, and I'm just going to add that right underneath. Do a drag and drop is probably the easiest way to do that. Right underneath major category. And you'll notice it doesn't change your visual much. What actually changes is your user now has the ability when they're looking at something like overhead expense, I can right click on that item now and say drill down. You have to be right on top of it. I'll just pick the bigger one. I can choose drill down, and now it's going to take that amount that it's showing me and break it across by individual accounts. And I can see everything kind of falls in one account, the miscellaneous expense. To get back, I just right click and I choose to drill up, and it takes me back up to the main visual. I could do that same thing with the values that are coded to a blank category. I could drill down, and now I can see what are the accounts that haven't been associated with a major category. So this might actually be kind of a data integrity issue. We might need to go back and update these accounts or fix our data so that we don't have them falling out of the report or falling off the report. To get back, I just right click and I go drill up. So that adds depth. Now we might also want to add context to this visual. So in adding context, it might be that I'm showing or I'm currently charting the variance between the values. But when I look at this and I see $200,000 in overhead expenses, I don't know, that's the variance or the difference between this year and last year. Is that a lot or not really? Well, if I'm talking about billions of dollars, 200 million, not, or 200,000 might not be a big deal. But if I'm just talking about like last year, we didn't have any overhead expenses and this year we have 200,000, then it's a much bigger deal. So what I want to do is I want to add to this visual what they call a tooltip. So the tooltip is where you hover over the value and a little box pops up. That box that pops up is called the tooltip. So right now it's just showing me what are the filter values for this visual that I'm pointing at and what is the amount that it's displaying. But I can add additional information to that as well. So what I'm going to do, again, focus on the visual in the visualizations pane. We can see in here that I have my category, I have my y-axis, and then I have a field here called tooltips. And what I want to add here is I want to go in my tooltip, and I'm going to go in the expenses folder and navigate all the way down to the expense actual amount selected. And I'm going to add that as a tooltip. And I'm going to add the expenses actual amount PY also as a tooltip. And I just did a drag and drop into that little box. And now when I hover on my visual over the top, I not only see the variance, but I see what was it this year and what was it last year. And I can now see that when I'm talking about that 200,000, and you got to get it just right. And mine is a little bit hard. Up there it is. Mine's hard just because of the size of my mouse and the size of my monitor here, but I can see it. This one should show a little easier. There you go. So this one, like, yeah, all of my expenses, I didn't have anything in this category last year. So, you know, although it's not a big number or not the major contributor to the variance total, it still is concerning because it's 100% of a variance. So I might want to look into it and say, what's going on over there? Why is that such a big variance? Excellent. Now, as we're looking at this, the other thing that I have is, you know, the sort order. If I want the positive to be first and then the negative to give kind of a true waterfall look, what I can do is if I'm focused on the visual, I can change the sort order by clicking here on the ellipsis or the 3 dots. And I can go down to sort axis. Then I can come over and I'm going to find that variance amount and just check that box. And then I'm going to do that same step again. I'm going to go to the ellipsis, the 3 dots, and I'm going to change the sort order to ascending. Oh, no, I did want it descending. That was right. Just need to give it a second to update. So there we go. So now I have the green first, and then I see the red. Great. So now hopefully you guys had some success with your waterfall chart. Again, I know I'm going super fast. Don't worry, guys. You guys have access to this environment for the next couple weeks. You have all of the buttons available to you. You can also send us a message and we'd always be happy to hop on a call and answer questions as well. So next one we're going to do is a pie chart. So in the pie chart, what I want to analyze here is I want to look at what is my revenue by branch. So again, we're going to still look at the revenue amount, but I want to analyze it by the branches. So I'm going to go ahead, click in my open space. I'm going to go under the visualizations pane to the pie chart, and then I'm going to define it. So what is the value that I want to explain my number by? And that is going to be the branch field. That's in the account table as well. So let's go to account and find branch description and put that as the legend. And then what is the amount or the measure that I want to see? And what we're going to analyze here is we'll do the revenue again. So I'm going to go down to GL balances detail. And in the account measures under revenue, I'm going to go find that selected amount and I'm going to add that to the value. Now, again, I like to see things in context. If I hover over, I get that tooltip that pops up. I want to add the prior year in the tooltip. So all I'm going to do is take that revenue actual amount prior year and just drag and drop that into the tooltip. So now when I hover, I see that the tooltip as well. Now there's a lot of options you have within a pie chart. Like, do you want to see this legend? Yes or no, right? Do you want it on or off? Where do you want it? If it's on here, do you want it on the side? Do you want it across the top? Again, you want to analyze what is the data that you're looking at? How do you see it? Do we need to change the title? This says it's an expense analysis up in the title. We probably want to change that because we just pulled in the revenue amount. So I'm going to just go over here to my format, my visual, under general, under title, and I'm going to change this and I'm going to call it revenue analysis. And it will update my title for me. And then as I look at the values, again, we have lots of ways to format these. Underneath what they call data labels, you have a choice here for what do you want the display piece to be. Do you want it to be the value and the percent? Do you want it to be just the value, just the percent? Do you want to have categories in there or not? You want to see everything. So there's all the detail. So I see the South branch, the North branch. If I do all the detail, then I'd get rid of the legend. So on this one, the legend, I might be able to just pick up some extra space because I changed the display to show everything. So lots of different ways that you guys can play with these visuals. I definitely encourage you, you're not going to break anything on our side. Come in here on your reports, really dig into these visuals, look at all the different ways you can change them and do things with them. Really what I'm trying to do here is just introduce you to some of the different visual types, but you guys get to experiment with them or play with them. This next visual that I'm going to show you, this is one of my new favorites. It's called the decomposition tree. And what the decomposition tree allows me to do is to start with a value. So I want to go ahead and we're going to look at the gross profit now. We haven't looked at gross profit yet. So let's go to gross profit. I'm going to go find that gross profit amount selected, and I'm going to add that as my analyze button. Oops. So focus on our window here. Go to visualizations pane. The decomposition tree looks kind of like a little family tree icon kind of on the side. And then in the analyze, I'm going to put gross profit actual amount selected. And that gives me what's my gross profit. It just sits there. Now I get to say in the explain by, what are all the different ways that I would want to explain or allow my user to analyze their gross profit? And that's what I'm going to put here in this field well called explain by. So we're going to use some of the fields from the account table. So I'm going to go back up to the account and I'm going to say, I want to be able to analyze my gross profit by branch. So I'm going to find that branch description and I'm just going to add it in the explain by field. So now my users over here and they're looking at their data, if they hit the little plus mark, they can choose branch description and now they see their 3 branches. So they take this gross profit number and they're now analyzing it by branch. To get rid of it, I hit the little X. Now, what if my user wants to analyze by division? I'm just going to take that division and drag it right over, put it right underneath the branch description. And now this is where it gets cool. When the user comes in here, or they might want, actually, let's do it one more. If there, they might want to analyze by account. So I'm going to put the account under the explain by as well. So now I've added this depth to this visual. This is where it's cool. Users looking at gross profit, they want to analyze it, but they want to analyze by account. All they have to do is hit the plus mark and they can choose which one of those 3 fields they want to analyze by. So now I'm looking at the account number and the amount, and I might want to actually analyze that by the branch. And now that I'm looking at the branch, I might want to go analyze that by the division. To get out of this, again, I can just hit these X's and it closes everything back down. Now, maybe I want to start by division or by branch this time. So I'm going to hit the plus, I'm going to choose branch, and then I'm going to go here and I'm going to go look at this from branch straight to account. And I can see the data by the account. I like to think of this as like, this shows my age, totally shows my age, but the like choose your own adventure books where you read a chapter and it says, this whole big crazy fight scene and it's like, the princess is in the castle, is she going to jump off the side into the moat or is she going to run down the stairs? And you choose which one she's going to do and then you flip to a different page in the book to get the story. That's what we're doing here, but we're doing it with our ERP data. So very fun and exciting. This is really helpful if you're coming from a different system and maybe you're going to start to adopt Power BI, but users are used to being able to go in and slice and dice their data. Maybe they put it in an Excel. They export the data to Excel and they use Power Pivot tables, and they like to be able to control the data they're looking at. This is a nice visual to help ease them into Power BI where everything is defined ahead of time or in front of them, and they can see it. Now, the other thing I like to do with this is, again, we hover and I've got the gross profit sitting here. You have a tooltip available here. So we can add some additional measures in the tooltips. So I'm going to just go out here under my account measures and I can add the tooltips like for the revenue and for the expenses. So I'm going to find that revenue amount selected and add that as a tooltip. And then I might navigate up to the expenses folder and find the expenses selected and add that as part of the tooltip. And then finally, the gross profit. Okay. Now I don't need to add gross profit as part of the tooltip, but maybe I want to see, I have the variance or the variance percent. I could add those in there as well. So, but that way, as the user hovers, they can have a little bit more context about their gross profit. What were their revenues? What were their expenses? And then, yeah, if I use the percent, what's the percentage on that? Now, with the order that you have them in the tooltip box, that whenever you put it in the field well, that is the order that they're going to show up when you hover. So you do have the ability to kind of manipulate that tooltip box for the users. Great. Okay, this next one is super fun. This one is probably the most complex one we're going to do, and this is a trend chart. So what this one allows us to do is we're going to analyze our net income. But what I want to do is look at my net income month over month and see, how am I doing, good or bad? So we're going to use the line chart visual to do this. So let's go ahead and go to your L9 and I'm going to hit the little focus on that visual. And I'm going to click over here in visuals. I want to go to the line chart and then we're going to define it. So the x-axis, what's going to go across the bottom? And I said I want to see it month over month. So let's go up to the calendar table and let's find underneath the fiscal subfolder period description short and put that in the x-axis. And then what is it that I want to analyze? We're going to analyze the net income. So we're going to go find our measure. So that's in our fact table, GL balances detail. And we're going to go down to the net income folder. And I'm going to find my net income amount selected and put that in the Y axis. So now I see my month over month. How am I doing? Now what we want to do is I want to maybe see this broken down. So I could add in here into the legend how I want to break this down. So right now, I'm just seeing my month over month for everything. But if I want to see this by, let's go with division, all I have to do is go to my account table and I can go find that division and description. And I'm going to add that as the legend. And now I see a different line for each one of my divisions. If I click in the legend on one of those, it kind of highlights it and grays everything else out just a little bit. I click twice, it brings the whole visual back. So here I'm seeing that visual, my line chart. Now, one of the things that, again, was already set up for us, so I apologize for that. Typically, when we build these line charts, what we would see is just a single dot. And that's because it's limited by our slicer up here to only show one item. So whenever we were in any of our other visuals, if I changed the slicer, it would change the data to whatever I chose in the slicer. This line chart, though, I want to show the data, but I don't want the period visual to affect it. So there's an icon out here, and this is, I'm talking about it because it's right here in your instructions on step 5, where you have to go to edit interactions, and that's this double icon up here, and toggle it on. And then you focus on your period slicer and you hit this little Ghostbuster icon. So if I'm filtering, I just see the dots of what it is. So now as I look, I only see 1 month at a time. So what I want to do is say, I don't want this slicer to affect this visual. So we come in here and we hit the little Ghostbuster icon so that now it doesn't, and then I go back and I have to toggle it back off. So I go back to edit interactions and off. So now it doesn't matter which period the user chooses. This visual is always going to show me all 12 months. Now the year still affects it. So if I come in here on my slicer and I go to 2019, the year is still going to affect it. Or if I go month to date versus year to date, that will affect it. So that's called edit interactions. Again, it's right here in your trend chart on step 5. So whenever you set these up, if you're doing like a line chart or an area chart, you're looking for that trend, you want to see things going across, you may need to edit the interactions so that your slicer isn't limiting. By default, all of these visuals automatically interact with each other on the page, just out of Power BI. So the last tab is just to create your report. So basically we're kind of starting from scratch and we could start building each one of these visuals. So, but the nice part is we've already built them. So if we just kind of navigate back across our page, I could go here to my L5 and take the visual that I had on this page and just do a copy, or my keyboard a Control-C. And I could navigate back over here to the create analysis summary and do a Control-V, and it would put that visual right on my page. And I could just kind of do this and get it. I'm not sure which, oh, I'm looking at 2011 here on my year. Now, One thing I don't like that this has all these years on it. So we've talked about filters just a little bit, and we looked at the visual level filter on these KPIs where I could do my service revenue or my construction revenue. You could also put filters at a page level so that whatever you put in here only affects this page, or you can do it at a report level where it does all of the pages of the report. So whenever you apply filters to a report, you've got 3 different levels of that. The other thing where we kind of take that filtering one step further is we actually have created or built in the model some actual fields that you might want to filter your data on as well. So if you look at the calendar table, under fiscal, there's actually a subfolder called filters. So these are pre-built filters and they're going to be dynamic that will help us to limit data. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this filter to say, show me the last 3 years. And I'm going to add that as a report level filter. So I'm just going to right click on last 3 years and I'm going to say add to filters. Oops, I did not add it to filters. I'm going to say add to filters, and then I'm going to choose a report level filter. And then I come over here and I just say last 3 years. Yes, please. So now this just shows me 3 years. Based on my current year, what are the previous 2 years? Now, all of my demo data is back in 2019, so I probably don't want to use 3 years, but I could maybe get away with 5 years. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that on the 5 years and say report level filter, and then change that to a yes. So now my slicer shows me 5 years. So I can choose that 2019 for period 9, but I don't have all of those years listed. I'm just seeing 5 options or 3 options. And it's going to be dynamic based on what your current date is in the calendar. Okay. The other option for that is instead of actually making this dynamic, I could have just gone to the calendar table. I could have chosen the field for year, put that in as a report level filter, and I could have hard coded to just show, this might actually be a little bit better, 17, 18, 19. So now my user just can choose between the 3 years. So there's September of 2018. So again, playing with these filters can really help drive the user experience and what they're seeing. We could do this again with each one of the different visuals that we just built. I could come here, I could take this construction revenue. Again, I'm going to copy using a Control C. I'm going to go to the other page of my report. I'm going to click, I'm going to do a Control V for Victor, and then I could drag and drop that. Ultimately, I could do that again on every one of the visuals until I had a report that looked like this. So I've got my KPIs where I'm really digging into the revenue, both construction and service. I have an expense analysis visual. I've got I've got a waterfall chart where I'm looking at my expenses. I can analyze my gross profit. I can analyze my net income. So we can pull those together ultimately here on this create analysis summary. I really like to be able to copy and paste those visuals between the pages. You can actually do this between reports and Power BI as well. So it's really a fast way to create things or to copy visuals. So I could come here, I could grab my pie chart, again, copy it, and then paste it. So we're just gonna go ahead and build. You can do that copy paste. I will click on my report here. While you guys are doing your copy paste, I'll leave my page up just so you can kind of see the layout. I have the 2 KPIs, then I had the pie chart, the waterfall chart, the decomposition tree, and then the trend. The extra credit here is what they call drill through. So as you're putting together your report, the drill through is just the ability to go from a picture to the actual transaction detail. There's a couple steps in doing a drill through. The first thing in the drill through is you have to actually create the page that you want it to go to. So I would come in here and create a visual, just a table with all the fields that I want in it. So you can just watch me on this. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to go a little bit faster on this one because I want to make sure we have some time at the end for questions. But in here, I could just get my table. I'm going to say it's a table. I'm going to add the different fields that I want to that table. What you have in here doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to my GL balances. I like to have my details in here before. So let's see, I'll start at account. So I know that we had this branch in one of our visuals. We had the division. We used the major category. And then we actually had like counts in here. And then I might come down to my actual amounts. And I have some amount fields. And then I might even go down to GL and I might say, I want to see what's my transaction information, what's the reference information, when was it posted, and get all of these details. So I've kind of build this out. I usually like my amounts to be the very last field. It's just kind of how I do it. But so this is just a visual. Now what I want is my users looking at that picture, if they have questions, I want them to come here and see what are the transactions that make that up. So in order to do that here in our visualization pane, we need to add these drill through fields. These are basically the keys to get us to this page of the report. Okay. So I would take this page and or this visual, and I'd make it its own page. So to do that, I'm going to go back here, take this page and duplicate it. So I just right click, duplicate, delete these guys off. And then I'm going to take my table that I just created and put that right here on my duplicate page. And now that I have this page created, I'm going to say, what are the drill through fields? So again, most everything I have in my table, I want to be a drill through value. So if any visual, any picture that we have has this field on it, the user would be able to come to this detail. So I just do right click, add to drill through. I'm going to do that on branch description. I'm going to do that on division. I'm going to do it on major category. So every one of those fields, I'm going to do that. Now, if I go back to that summary report and I'm looking at my visual and I have a question about where that number came from, if I right click, I'm going to see an option in here. Oh, not on that one, on this one. Should see an option to drill through. Oh, because when I drill down, go across, and see I have that drill through. And it tells me whatever I named the page, that's what I see here. When it goes, it passed over the values. It passed over the account information that I had. It passed over the branch and description, and it limited my transactions to that year to date, the month, or the period, the year, and it's showing me those transactions. So I can help to explain the details. So that's what they call the drill through. Again, if the user then holds down the control key and clicks this, or they click the back arrow, I'm going to have to hold down the control key to do it, brings me back to my original report. So again, it's all about the user experience, giving them the ability to get to their own answers or find their own answers as they're looking at the detail. You won't see a drill through if what you're looking at is not defined as one of the drill through fields. So you'll notice on this waterfall chart, this highest level major category, I didn't add that as a drill through field. So when I right click here, I don't see drill through as an option. I have to drill down to the next layer, which is the account, to be able to drill through. If I went back to that table, my transaction details here, I'm going to rename this and call it transaction detail or transactions. And then I go to my account table and I add that major category and description as a drill through. Now, if I go back to my summary page and I right click, oh, it's because it was major. It has to be the exact same field. This is what gets you. It has to be major category description. So let me go back to my transactions page. Major category. I did category and description. Bad Michelle. Right click here. And I'm going to add this as a drill through for major category description. Kind of see that we got that there. So I've got major category and description twice. That was wrong. But I have major category and description and then major category description. So now when I go back to that analysis summary, I right click, I now see drill through and I can get to transactions. Again, it passed over that information and I see what makes up that value that I was looking at. Now, you have to be careful because what we were looking at first was a variance. So I just saw a difference. This is showing me the actual transactions and to get me to that difference. So great. Okay, guys, that was a lot of information. We have about 10 minutes left. So I want to hand it back over to David. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, you will have access to all of this. I should tell you before I hand it over to David, everything that you've done, you probably want to save. You will see in the top right corner a save this report icon. Go ahead and save that. That will save all of your changes that you just built. You do have the ability to come back to this. To get back and look at your report in kind of that consumer mode or that end user mode, you're going to use the buttons on the top and choose the option for reading view. So now you'll get out of that designer mode and you can navigate between your pages just right here on the buttons and you'll see everything that you just created. You do have the show me option or the solution option that will show you like how we got to what we did. And the show me will walk you through the steps. And as always, you can always reach out to us or call us and we would be happy to walk you through it as well. So with that, David, I'll hand it back over.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. You're right. That was a lot of information, but I feel like you did a great job going through all those different lessons. And again, like Michelle said, if you have any questions or you get stuck anywhere, please reach out to us. Michelle, I am going to share my screen. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Can, yes.
Cool. All right. We did have a couple questions come in before I get to the Amazon gift card. I was hoping that you could maybe elaborate on this first one is how do you get your reports from the Power BI service tool to the Power BI mobile app?
Oh, perfect. Yes. There is actually a button. Oh man, we shouldn't have changed presenters here. Let me get back and share my screen. On your screen, if you're looking at it and you're in that edit mode still, go into edit mode. There is go to any of the pages. I like to go to the analysis summary page. And in there, you can choose the option across the top that says file view, reading view, mobile layout. Then you can choose that option for the mobile layout. And that will give you the ability to create the mobile view. Now for the, oh, thank you, David. So for the user, so right there, you can see mobile layout. Now they just came out with this. If you scroll down a little bit, David, this is really cool. It used to be you had to do old school like David's doing, where you had to drag everything over. But if you go to that if you look at the actual screen where it has the create mobile layout view, David is a little bit zoomed in here. There's a blue button that says auto create.
It's up here.
Oh, that one too. Perfect. So if you hit the auto create, it's going to take all of your visuals and put it in for you. And now you could move things around, resize them, take things out. If the user opens, so like you might not want those logos at the bottom. They're just going to take up space. They're not really adding value for what we're trying to do. So you can just X those out and take them off of the report.
Hmm.
But this allows you, if a user were to open Power BI through the mobile app, this is the view they would see. If they opened the report on a browser, so from their desktop, they would see what, the other view. You can bounce between the two up on the top. You see where it has like the web view. Oh, or right there where David's pointing at the bottom left corner too. Desktop view versus the mobile layout, or you can use the buttons at the top of the page. So definitely exciting to be able to do that with just the click of a button. And if you, for sales reports, you have those sales reps out in the field, they're walking in to meet with a customer. You want them to do a quick from their car. They just want to look and say, what's the status of this customer? Are they happy? Are they sad? Do they have any outstanding orders? Do they have an outstanding balance with us, or are they up to date? Can I offer them additional discounts? They can get all of that right there off of their cell phone as they're walking in the door. But then you might have other reports where they can really get in and do some more analysis of what types of products are they ordering, what categories are those from, where are we shipping them from, how much are our shipping costs to get to them? Can we lower those somehow? So that analysis you wouldn't want to do from your phone in the car as you're walking in the door. So very, you have the ability to add those that mobile layout on every report. You just might not want to use it, but it is there. Another question? Sorry about that, David.
No, that was great. I didn't know about the auto create button, so that is nice to know. And yeah, to wait, it could save a lot more time in the old school way.
Yeah.
Um,
And that auto create, they do have some sort of a formula with that because they always put the slicers at the top and then the different visuals. So I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it, but it usually gets that layout to what I want. Yeah, every time I've been doing it. So I'm not that picky, but it gets it close.
Very cool. The only other question I had in here was how do you build your own calculations? I don't know if you want to take a stab at that or do you want me to?
Um, Building calculations we can do in the desktop application. In the service, I'm not sure that we even can create calculations in the service, but
No.
definitely we can build the report level calculations in the desktop application. Um, or in our case, we actually build them into the model. So we recommend or want you to build them in the model so that you have consistent measures across all of your reports. That way, if you make any changes, you update it in one place and all the reports get changed, as opposed to doing kind of ad hoc calculations on every report, which is what happens in Excel spreadsheets a lot of times. So we like to look at kind of data governance and making sure that we have this one model that gives us that single source of truth. And we use Tabular Editor 3 to create those measures for the model. So did I cover everything you were going to say, David?
Yeah, that was well put. Just to kind of show you what that looks like. So, as Michelle mentioned, to add models to your sort of enterprise analytics data set or data model, it's probably going to look a little bit different than adding a measure or a calculation to your Power BI report that you're working in Power BI Desktop. And as Michelle mentioned, we usually use this tabular editor tool to connect to our analytics data set and then manage measures and relationships and metadata within this tool. But there are times when you might want to add a measure to a report. Let's say you wanted like a dynamic title or some dynamic conditional formatting that is only going to be used for your report. You can do that in the Power BI desktop. And I don't really have a demo report that correlates to what you guys worked on today open right now, but similar look and feel. You have your data over here. And if you wanted to add a measure, there's really two ways you can do it. You can come over here and click new measure. And then this opens up like a formula editor and the language it uses is data analysis expressions, which is a functional language similar to Excel, but you just come in here and you can start just typing in your formula like you would in Excel, except it operates over tables and columns and rows. So you could do it that way, and that'll add a measure to your data model. Another cool way to kind of get used to writing DAX is to create a quick measure, which is basically Power BI's new AI assisted way of creating measures for your model. And then it kind of gives you sort of this, you can see Copilot, which is the Fabric or slash Microsoft's new AI assistant is being built in here. So you can actually just use natural language query, or you can pick one of these, right? Like you can say, oh, I want to see what the sales from new customers are. And so then it'll tell you, well, hey, grab the sales amount field, the customer ID field, and the date field you want to use to drive the calculation, and we'll go ahead and write that measure for you. So a couple different ways that you can tackle that depending upon the use case. All right, so I don't think there was any other questions. Michelle, can you pick a 3 random numbers between 1 and 27?
I'm going to go with 3, 11, and 13.
So 3, 11. So I got Christian Gonzalez, Joyce Ridgway, and Casey Bell. Hopefully I said those names correctly. Those are our winners for our $25 gift card. I'll have our team reach out to you guys and make sure you get those after today's session as we follow up with the recording and access information. I hope you guys got came away with some value from today's session and are feeling a little bit more comfortable creating Power BI content. And we hope to see you on some upcoming workshops and education sessions that we have next year. So thanks, Michelle. Thanks for Ben for doing the demo, and hope everybody has a happy holidays.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
David.
everyone.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye, everybody.
Bye.